Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Always great to have you with us.
Hello?
Today, we're jumping right into the recent 2025 NATO summit, which just wrapped up in The Hague.
That's right, a very significant meeting.
Absolutely. And our mission today, we want to unpack the key decisions, look at some maybe surprising shifts, and really figure out what it all means, for global security and for you.
Definitely. This summit, well, it certainly presented some changes from past approaches, and the implications are pretty far-reaching.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's set the stage first. For anyone who maybe just caught the headlines, what was the big picture?
Sure. So the summit was June 24th and 25th in The Hague, and it was actually quite a milestone.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, it was the first time the Netherlands has ever hosted a NATO summit.
Yeah.
So you had leaders there from all 32 member states.
Right, all 32 now.
Exactly. And the main focus was pretty clear: enhancing collective defense, and dealing with this rapidly changing landscape of global threats.
Okay. What were the hot topics on the agenda?
Well, the big ones were increasing defense spending. That was huge, reaffirming Article 5, the Collective Defense Clause, which is always central. And, of course, tackling ongoing geopolitical tensions, especially concerning Ukraine and wider European security.
Okay, let's dig into that defense spending part, because here's where it gets really interesting, right? The numbers are quite something.
They really are. NATO members committed to, well, a remarkable new target. They're aiming to raise defense spending to 5% of their GDP
5%. Wow. By when?
by 2035. And remember, the previous target was 2%, which already felt like a big lift for many just a few years ago.
That's a massive jump. Is there a breakdown of that 5%?
Yes, it's quite specific. So 3.5% is for what you might call core defense. The other 1.5% is earmarked for things like infrastructure, intelligence, cybersecurity, these crucial support areas.
Okay, 5% is
Yeah.
a huge commitment. What drove such an ambitious target? Was everyone on board?
Well, the push largely came from U.S. President Donald Trump. He's been, consistently critical of members not meeting the existing lower targets.
Right, that's been a theme.
Definitely. He called this agreement a great victory and really emphasized needing a stronger, more self-reliant NATO.
But was there pushback? I mean, 5% is a lot for some economies.
Oh, absolutely. There were concerns. Some countries, like Spain, for instance, expressed real worries about being able to actually meet these new targets, given their economic constraints.
And how did that go down?
Well, President Trump's response involved threatening punitive measures. So it definitely highlights these ongoing tensions within the alliance about, who pays for what. It's aiming for financial strength, sure, but it also perhaps tests the unity a bit.
Okay, shifting gears from budgets to geopolitics. Ukraine. What did the summit signal for Ukraine's hopes of joining NATO? That's always a big discussion point.
Yeah, and this was particularly notable. The summit's final statement, the communique, it actually omitted the previous explicit commitments about Ukraine eventually joining NATO.
Omitted, so less direct language than before.
Exactly. It reflects a much more cautious approach, it seems. Now, President Trump did meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky,
Okay.
and he expressed conditional support for military aid, but the overall tone, definitely more reserved compared to past summits on the membership question.
So just to clarify then, the message seems to be continued support, practically speaking, but maybe full membership isn't exactly around the corner, perhaps because of worries about escalation.
Precisely. That seems to be the read. It suggests that while NATO is still backing Ukraine with vital support, that pathway to full membership isn't imminent. The alliance appears to be carefully balancing its support with worries about escalating tensions, particularly with Russia.
Right, a tricky balancing act. How have these outcomes, the spending and the Ukraine stance, been received more broadly? What are analysts saying?
Well, reactions are pretty mixed, as you might expect.
Hmm.
You have some analysts who see the increased defense spending as, necessary, long overdue even to strengthen NATO for a more dangerous world.
Oh.
But then others are critical. They see it as perhaps yielding too much to President Trump's specific demands without really tackling some of the deeper underlying alliance issues.
Like what kind of issues?
Well, critics, especially some in Europe, argue that focusing so heavily on just a GDP percentage, while it looks like burden sharing, it might overshadow debates on NATO's strategy for things like hybrid warfare or climate security, or even its stance towards China, the bigger strategic picture.
So connecting this to the bigger picture then, what's the takeaway on NATO's direction?
I think the summit underscores NATO's commitment to collective defense, fundamentally, and its ability to adapt. But yes, the intense focus on spending targets and the, let's say, nuanced handling of Ukraine's membership hopes. It clearly shows there are ongoing debates about NATO's future path and its internal unity.
So two really big shifts we've unpacked today. Those ambitious new defense spending targets, and a noticeably more cautious stance on Ukraine's future NATO membership.
That sums it up well.
Which really raises an important question for you, our listener, to think about. When you consider these outcomes, this mix of renewed financial promises and maybe more careful geopolitical steps, what does that mean for the alliance? How well can it maintain its core principles while navigating this incredibly fast-changing world?
A crucial question indeed.
Thank you so much for diving deep with us today. As always, we encourage you to keep exploring these vital topics on your own. We'll catch you next time.